exactly right.
All right, good morning, everybody. We'll go ahead and get started. We may have a few others joining us, but I wanted to introduce myself. I think I recognize most of you, and I don't know who recognizes me, but I'm Rachel Wright. I work in the Office of Vocation and Calling, and I am a 2007 grad of Houghton. And we are really glad that you all are here. We have three amazing Houghton alumni here to share a little bit about their journey since leaving Houghton. I have some questions that I've typed up ahead of time, but I really want this to be a chance for you all to ask your questions that you have about what life is like after Houghton. And that can be things, jobs. We have a great range of experiences here. I'll let them introduce themselves here in just a moment. But before we get started, we'll just open with a word of prayer. Lord God, I thank you for this day. I thank you for each person who's here. I thank you for this place that has had such an impact on so many people's lives. And I just ask that as we hear some stories today, that this would just be a really great time of connecting with others who have a shared appreciation for Houghton and for the things that you're doing here and through our students and through our graduates. We just offer this time to you and thank you and praise you. In Christ's name, amen. All right, so to get started, I'm just gonna work kind of whatever order, however we want to here, it's very informal. If you can just introduce yourselves and maybe give a real quick overview, I'll leave it pretty open. So if you want to give a quick bio about yourself.
All right, I'm no stranger to going first, I suppose. So I'm Marc Williams. I'm a 2010 graduate of the college and actually a 2006 graduate of Houghton Academy. So I just spent too much time, not enough time, or the right amount of time in Houghton. I'll let you guys be the judge of that. Any Buffalo area folks? Like wait. I'm like, here's a game. Raise your hand if you're from Buffalo area. Only one? Seriously? Okay, we got a couple. All right, raise your hand if you're from the north towns. Keep your hand raised. Oh man, all right. I'm from Clarence, so I was hoping that maybe we'd cross the line. Oh, all right. You're like sort of. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You're like, you don't have a home. I'm just kidding. You can do it in the towns. Okay, cool. So I currently work at M&T Bank, which a lot of folks are probably familiar. It's a large, regional, super regional bank, and I'm in the mergers and acquisitions area, and specifically focused on evaluating non-bank opportunities in the financial technology investment space. Right before that, I actually came from a financial technology company where I ran kind of operations, product, customer success, and many flavors of things for a couple of years, from what's called seed series, if you know venture capital, to a Series B round. I have 3 little kids, which prompted a change back to M&T where I've been before, which is a little bit slower pace for me. So I'm sure as all of you guys contemplate your own careers, been there, done that, really happy to help, and really appreciate the opportunity from Rachel and Alex and all the team here to come chat. I love sharing whatever I can, so please don't be a stranger as we're talking. I know there's varying degrees of bravery, if you will, in the room. If you have a burning question, just shout it out, or come find one of us after. I think we would all be happy to talk one-on-one if that's more comfortable for you.
Well, good morning. I'm Carolyn. I'm a 2019 graduate, so not that long ago. But I kind of feel like I went here for a decade because both of my parents work here. So I see a lot of people here that I recognize. When I graduated in 2019, I started working at a nonprofit in Buffalo that worked with incarcerated individuals. And about 6 months ago, I started working for a staffing agency. A lot of big companies don't do their own recruiting anymore. They come to agencies. So we take a look at all the resumes that come in, we interview people, which is one of the reasons I was asked to be here, because I look at hundreds of applications every week. And I meet with people and I help them rewrite their resumes and I help them do better with applying and interviewing. We think that more as coaching rather than just accepting or denying people. We want them to actually do better at jobs. Specifically, I also tend to work with a lot of companies that have trouble with recruiting. So I see kind of the individual and company side. So let me know any of your questions. Happy to talk with any of you now or at a later time.
I'm Chi. I am class of 2006. I'm Houghton Academy class of 2002, right? Yes. Rachel was, what? We were in the academy together. We did a newsletter together.
Yes.
Which I didn't remember. What was it called?
The thumbprint.
The thumbprint. Oh my word. Oh, yeah. So, but yeah, so after graduating college, I went and worked in Rochester for a couple of years for Deloitte & Touche in accounting. I don't know if I should say this. Anyways, after that, I went to a regional firm in Ithaca, New York, where I was for about 7 years, doing public accounting there as well, and mostly in the credit unions, banks, and nonprofits audits. I told my managing partner he should not put me on tax returns, and he put me on tax returns and still lose the day that he did. So I was not good at tax returns. Anyways, and then after that, I realized I did not enjoy, take this with a grain of salt, I did not enjoy public accounting. So I jumped ship entirely. I acquired a software development company and ran that for 2 years. That one I merged into a larger software development company, and there's where I started my life in finance and as a VP of finance first and the CFO. We did 3 acquisitions as part of that. We sold that to a private equity company, and since then I've been doing private equity and venture capital. And if for any of you who are learning these things and you have questions about the difference between private equity, venture capital, so on and so forth, anything finance, I'm happy to chat. As Marc mentioned, don't shut up the question. I'm kidding. You can exactly fine. That's pretty much it. Oh, I also have a science fiction media site that I started during COVID days, and now it's taking more and more of my time. So if you guys are creatively inclined, happy to chat there too.
Okay, thank you. All right. Are there any questions before I jump into my list? Anybody already have a question? No brave souls. All right. All right. So I am, some of these different, I'm going to just jump around a little bit, but so we're going to jump straight to some of the challenges. So I've heard the quote that smart people learn from their mistakes, wise people learn from other people's mistakes. So if you wouldn't mind sharing from your experiences, what sorts of wisdom can you share based on your mistakes with the students that are here? I jumped right to the hard one.
None of them have ever made a
I'm
mistake.
cheating with my notes. I don't want you guys to think I'm,
Notes?
yeah. Last night I wrote out my notes.
Model, right there.
I told,
That's the model.
for those
right there.
familiar with the DISC personality profiles, I'm a DI or an ID, so that means sometimes my mouth moves faster than the brain, and this is my way of keeping that in check. Okay, challenges, obstacles, mistakes, I don't know, gosh, there's lots of those. Here's a personal thing that I often share these days, only because you'll find with probably a class this size, something like this will happen to you or someone in the room that you know or someone that you love, and so you just gotta be ready for it. We have my wife's actually a 2012 Houghton grad, but we have a son with a pretty serious congenital heart defect, and I'm a very driven, motivated, entrepreneurial person. Probably she and I are fairly similar in some regards there, and for a long time when my son was born, we found out about that sort of in utero, my reaction was, well, I just have to make the money for the family anyway, and I have to plow on with my career, and so that's what I'm going to do. Maybe it's the exclusion of my other values, right, that are there. Still went to church on Sunday, still went to small groups, still kind of walked the walk, if you will. But you know, I mentioned I was at a startup. I had the privilege of being the first non-founder executive at a financial planning analysis software company, which to me was like really exciting. I had come from a finance transformation data background. I was like, yeah, this is great. And for 2 years, I just gave a lot there, and without realizing it, I gave incrementally more each day to the point where I got burned out. And you know, I think you've heard a lot of people say in COVID, yeah, burnout's real, you know, I've gotten burnt out. I think I'm thankful for a lot of people who have spoken that into my life and been willing to share that. And why did that happen? Why did I tell that story? Well, I think it's because for me, I poured myself into this one thing called career to maybe the exclusion unintentionally of other values that are out there. And so, I think why I lead with the story of my son, I think you have to always remember what's the most important thing to you, and you have to take an inventory of that. I would say every quarter, to be honest with you, because I thought I was doing a good job every year, but then what happens if you skip a year? All of a sudden it's like 2 years, and shoot, I don't know who I am anymore, or I don't know what's important to me. So I think, maybe I'm telling you the learning and shortcutting it for you, hopefully not, but I think as you look at your career and these questions you might have for us, all of whom I think are pretty driven and care a lot about our career and want to be planful, I think you also need to think about what kind of person do I want to become, what kind of family do I want to have, assuming if you don't have kids now or if you do, what kind of child do I want to be to my parents? What kind of health habits am I building, right? Like, I got a dad bod that I'm trying to lose over time too, right? So, I think for me, there's a beauty in some of the challenges that come from life, and so if there's mistakes I've made, if there's challenges to overcome, it's mostly because it's not intentionally being grounded over and over again in your values, and I'm telling you, it's a really easy thing to do. And so I'd encourage all you guys, even now, as you're planning out your careers, I know a lot of you guys are seniors, and like, okay, what's next in your career? That's awesome. I want you to think also about, what do I want my friendships to look like in 5 years? What do I want my family to look like in 5 years? What do my health and my body and my stress levels look like in 5 years? And the other thing is you'll make all the same mistakes yourself. I'm sure I was sitting in your seat and had, the same advice and either ignored it or didn't internalize it. You get to a place, maybe you'll remember these words, maybe you'll remember other people's words in life. There's a lot of people out there too who will help you, and this place is a great place for that as well. And so I just encourage you guys, again, define your values, get close to people here, especially because these will be your friends. We all talk about, a lot of us have known each other for a long time. Like, Alex beat me up on the soccer field for a long time in high school. You just have a natural relationship with people who love the Lord, who want to build a great career, who want to go out and make the world a better place. And I think never forget right where that starts. It starts with a foundational relationship with Jesus Christ, and out of that comes your priorities.
I think my point is kind of similar in that I think don't forget to be proactive in changing your situation. I tend to lean into the fact that I can withstand a bad situation. I can kind of, grind on. You can keep going. And I think there is something to be said for being able to stick with a bad situation and see it through. Don't give up. But don't forget to be proactive if you're unhappy in the situation that you're in, or if you are kind of stalling, if you're not learning anything more. It requires a kind of nuance, because you have to hold both at the same time. You don't want to give up on situations too quickly. But don't forget to be constantly looking forward, kind of that plan ahead of, I'm not currently happy where I am, so what do I need to do, even if it's going to take a couple of years, to make sure that I am? And don't wait on that. Even if you're not leaving a job immediately or not moving to a city immediately, be thinking through actively ahead of time, what do you need to be doing in advance to prepare for that. Don't stand still if a situation isn't exactly where you want it to be.
How many seniors in this room? Can I get a show of hands? Juniors? Sophomores? And freshmen? And Houghton Academy kids? Anyway, okay. I asked that question because I think that you're all kind of probably thinking different where you are today, right? We're in March, February. Several of you are looking at graduating in a few months. How many of you have something lined up for the summer? Or more than the summer? How many are you in the middle of figuring that out? So the reason why I'm getting long with it, the reason why I'm asking that question is because the work that I did, public accounting, the business finance work I did was it's very technical. It's you behind the desk, behind the screen, and so on. And there's a comfort in that, I feel like. And I definitely drew a lot of comfort in that for a long time, which is there's certain things that you understand you can do and you can settle on. There's an answer, perhaps. But at the very least, you can get to some form of comfort as you're doing that work. The uncomfortable part is the people around you, right? The people that you don't know, the people that aren't you, the people that you have no reference point to relate to. So Marc was just telling me about his son today. I've been blessed in such a way that my kids don't have a health issue. And in my and Sarah's and my wife's experience, we're surrounded by a number of people who have health issues with their kids specifically. And so there's a sense of, I don't know how to enter that conversation. I don't know how to enter that person's life and be able to be authentic and say, listen, I'm not going to say things that I don't understand how to say. I feel uncomfortable saying, I'm really sorry to hear that, because I don't know what it feels like to be in that situation. I say this because that's one of the mistakes that I made, in my career, is paying so much attention to the work, what I know and what I did, versus the people around me that circulate around that work. Work was not everything, right? They had their own lives, they had their own families, their loves, their losses, and so on and so forth. And I think that in the past, I would say 4 years is probably when I started coming out of my technically heavy, behind the desk, world is an okay place kind of thing, to realize the world is much, much messier. And I think as you're all looking to go out there, the one thing I'd say is keep your faith, keep your friends, keep your family, and then keep the other people that you don't know, that do not fall into that, close to you, because that's where your life, your career will start to flower a little bit better. Because it's the people that will ultimately bring you the things that you need in your life, whether you want them or not, two different things. But that's where the stuff of life happens. It happens with other people, not your work. And the more that you realize that your work is about people, those are the things that I did not pay attention to when I was a CFO, when I was doing the work behind the desk. And so a lot of times, I'd get into a situation where I'd be like, no, this is the right answer. But guess what? So many people didn't want to hear my right answer because I had no idea of how I was communicating that right answer to them. Maybe they weren't in a place to hear that right answer. Maybe they didn't want to hear that right answer because they had some other idea around it. In other words, they wanted a project to succeed. So they were not ready to hear that a project shouldn't go forward, right? And it's like, okay, how do you navigate that? Especially if that's your boss, right? Especially if it's a boss that's like, nope, this is how we run our business or whatever it is. I don't want to hear a no. I don't care what the numbers say. And today, I'm an operating partner at a VC firm, and we look at over, let's see, 2 weeks ago we looked at over 80 new startups that came through an application pipeline. And I'm a finance guy, so I never get it. So the scoring rubric was out of 3. I never gave anyone a 3 because I'm a finance guy. Like, how could you know? How could you know? And so there's there's several of these startups where there's a diligence committee, right? You do this as a team. We all gave them a 1. There were several that we all gave them 1s. But the managing partner is like, nope, I still believe in this. I want to do it. Okay. Okay. But this is the thing, is like, you got to understand where people are. So pay attention to the people that you're around. Pay attention to the friends that you've built and the family that you have and the faith that you hold on to, because that's kind of like the binding thing. I often wonder what it would be like to be in the team of disciples, the 12 disciples. What was it like to hang around in, I don't know, where, like, around a dinner table and to be that team, because that team did the things that Christ wanted them to do. And then they went off to some crazy experiences, ridiculous experiences, which I don't think any of us typically want. But,
All right, any questions so far?
Hey, to add to that though too, I would say, so for you guys, like when I was in school, I just thought, I want to get out of here really fast and go and do things, really big things. And I see laughs of like people probably in high school, and they're like not surprised by that. But you really should know yourself, really really well, and you will change too. So like I think invest in that in college as much as you're investing in like your, to Chi's point, the technical knowledge. I mean, I'll be honest, like in finance particularly, it's probably a little different in recruiting because you're talking to people more. Although I think it's still the case. Permission to grow is your technical skill set often. It's like finance, accounting, data science, whatever, like very sort of math heavy, if you will, careers. I think to Chi's point, if you want to grow to a level beyond that, you have to factor in the people. And I think knowing yourself is a huge part of that, right? If you're like, if this is what it's going to take to do X, Y, Z career, even if it sounds great, but that's not you, don't do it. Just don't. Like, I promise you, you'll make money. Like, that's not money. Making money is not hard. Don't worry about that. I think God put each one of us on this earth with our certain skills and personality to go do that. Exactly. Like I think Chi's not giving himself enough credit, right? Like he's through introspection said, hey, this is how like I would be a more effective Christian professional, right? And so that's what he cares a lot about, right? He doesn't just care about debits and credits. I think the same thing is true. Do it now, right? Like I wish I had started. I wish I had been like, I just want to go make my impact on the world. And it takes time and thought, right? Maybe I'm being dangerous by mentioning the Enneagram at Houghton. I don't know how that goes. I've been gone too long, so I hope I get a pass on that. But things like that, things like this, tools that will help you to get to know yourself and put yourself in a frame of reference. Where like, hey, I know like who I am, and then maybe I know something about who my spouse will be, or I know something about who my coworkers are. I think is just super important. So look, if you're an accountant, like God bless you, we need all of those. I studied a lot of accounting, but it was like to serve a master of analytical finance, not to do accounting. But work on some of the other stuff too, right? And if you're just like think that you're this larger than life personality, you're gonna go out there, like think about how you come across to the world too, because the more you do that earlier on, the less stress, less friction, the sort of smoother sailing, if you will, you'll have.
I think to echo that, I give a very recent example of that. I graduated in 2019, and I moved to Buffalo where I didn't know a whole lot of people, and it was very isolating. And rather than trying to grow my social circle or think about the people there, I thought, you know what, I'm straight out of school, I'm tired of school, I want to be working, so I'm going to throw all of myself into my work. So at 22, not really having a support network or a social life in Buffalo, I became overinvested in a nonprofit work, which is very easy to do in small and nonprofit businesses. So as someone who's just recently done that in the past few years, if you find yourself in a situation where there's that temptation to do that, look at other things you can be doing. Start volunteering. Get working at a church. Buffalo has different kinds of free events all the time, and every single city does. If you're not rural, it should be fairly easy. But you sometimes have to put effort into that. In college, it's really easy to make friends because you're surrounded by people that are doing exactly what you're doing. And I know some of you who might be more introverted or shy might be laughing at me saying it's easy to make friends in college. I don't know who's in the room. I get that. But when you leave college and you're working, and you're frequently going to be the youngest person in your office, and your life experience is different from everyone else around you. When you go to church, you're probably the youngest person there. You have to put in different effort to create a social network. And that effort is needed and worth it. Don't put that on a back burner because you want to completely give yourself to your new job. It won't pan out well.
We have a question. As a current junior and someone who's halfway through the semester, it's really hard at this point to sort of like motivate ourselves, I feel like not just for me, but everyone, to sort of like push through our classes and really refocus on what our goals are in college. Hearing how guys, you're very like driven and motivated, I was just curious if you had any input on times when you've been really unmotivated or stuck in sort of a rut on how you guys may have gotten out of that.
Yeah, a lot. I think whenever I have found myself in a rut and completely unmotivated to work on something that seems huge, joining the workforce is huge. It's overwhelming. And this is going to sound like a cliche, but learning to cut it down into bite-sized chunks rather than being like, I need to now focus. I've just worked all week on my classes. I barely slept. I probably haven't eaten a balanced diet lately. Probably haven't been doing a lot of things that would be needed. I kind of say we're like houseplants, right? Like if you give yourself less than a houseplant, you can't expect yourself to function. And we all fall into that. When you're overwhelmed, don't think about the project of finding a job. I wouldn't view that as a task. You can think of your task as, I'm going to go on Indeed for 1 hour this week, or half an hour this week, whatever is a manageable thing, to not overwhelm yourself and say, I'm just going to look and Google kind of position titles or an area in a rough city that you might want to live in and see what comes up, and do that kind of thing once a week. Because if you're feeling tired and unmotivated, don't give yourself a daunting, huge task. So do that half an hour or an hour, or say, I'm going to take a look at my resume, and it's not going to be perfect, but I'll just fill in a few things here. That would be my tip. Yes.
How much of resume building, or like the coaching that you do with folks you work with, is introspection?
Oh, a lot of it. Yeah, a lot of people do tasks in their work that they don't even realize they're doing, and sometimes just takes someone questioning them on it to pull it out. Or you hated your last job. Why? Sometimes it's really you just hate 1 or 2 tasks, or really you just hated your boss, or things like that. Yeah, it's a lot of just getting someone to pull it out of you and think about it. So doing it with a buddy, with a friend, with a parent, with someone will help you think about it in a different lens is really helpful. But do small chunks, again. Small chunks.
Yeah, so I actually, it's not a novel approach, right? Which should be good news to everyone. It doesn't take rocket science to do it, because what she's describing is exactly like. So I went from Houghton to do my MBA right afterwards. At the time, it was a marketing ploy of the University of Rochester to get young people to do an MBA. Now it's less out of favor. Like you can look at me like I have 3 heads because I did an MBA right after undergrad. It's okay. But I said, okay, this is really serious, and I'm at a disadvantage because I'm a young, much younger person. I don't qualify for all these program, internships and direct hire things that most MBAs would, because I'm this young kid out of school. I already told you about my desire to move fast and break things. So here's what I did, and hopefully this is a little bit helpful. And it's exactly, I'll echo that a little bit. I just went in and said, okay, what do I want? Well, I want a job, and usually in MBA, and I think the same is true in undergrad, right? You get a job by having experience. So like typically internship experience in your junior and senior year summers, and if you can get more before that, awesome. So MBA is similar. Your first year internship can often lead to a full-time offer, and I would always think about that too. It's like your current job could always lead to your next job. So anyway, your goal, right, is get a job after graduation. Then it's get an internship, right, before that. Then it's like, okay, so how the heck do I get an internship? Because that's just as hard as getting a job. Maybe harder, because there's all sorts of stigmas about interns. So you say, well, where do I, right, and then you keep pathing it back, right, to these actionable things you can do. Where do I want to live? Okay, what are the big employers there that either do what I do or have a meaningful function of, what that is? And I think very often, and what I did there, I think you can do here, you leverage, let's toot Rachel's horn for a bit, you leverage your alumni database, you leverage your career center, right? And you say, okay, like what I did, that hour on Indeed for me was an hour, like 3 times a week on our alumni database, just looking for, hey, I thought I wanted to live down south. So I said, oh, Atlanta, Charlotte, Raleigh, whatever. Let me look at all the alumni there that do finance, and I would cold call them. Now, you can probably tell I'm not very shy. If you're shy, I'm sorry. You'll have to get over that. You will. But you don't seem super shy. You asked the first question, so nice job. But chunk it back, right? Say, like, I am just going to spend, and time box it. Put a timer on when you're doing it, too, so you don't get distracted, and it's like all of a sudden I see Chi posted something on his site about sci-fi, and I want to go deep in that, and the time that I was supposed to be spending on this other thing. If you do that, I guarantee you, two things. Number one, it's gonna be really painful up front because you're gonna hear a lot of no's and some rejection, or like people just won't even answer the phone. But number two, you'll hit a time when you do enough of that activity that all of a sudden, people like Carolyn will start calling you, or you'll be like, "Whoa, how did this happen?" And it's like, well, it actually happened because I did this for 10 weeks in a row for 5 hours a week, and oh my gosh, I did. But you have to begin with the end in mind. But you also have to path it all the way back to the smallest unit, right, of input you can do, because you're all really busy, you're not sleeping, you're eating terribly, you want to have friends, so like you're investing in that. But just go, the smallest thing, what can I do? Maybe it's 15 minutes, what can I do? And then you build that up, and I promise you this works. I promise you. And for those of you, like my little brother in college, whose parents were riding them all the way back because you may be a little, more methodical or whatever in your approach, your parents will get off your back. That's freeing, I think.
One little thing I would add off of that is if you're unmotivated, do the task you have the least motivation to do at the time of the day we have the most energy. So you all have different body clocks, right, and cycles when you know you have the most energy in the day. For me, it's early in the morning. I hate getting up early, but once I'm up, I'm good to go. Even in college, my best studying goes down there. I will choose the thing I hate the most. It gets me angry and I don't want to do it, but I will do that during that peak of the day. Do that for the thing you're least motivated to do. And you might find it a bit easier. So whether that's middle of the night, hopefully you're sleeping at middle of the night, but I doubt any of you are. But try that out and see if that helps.
Gee, you're an investor. What do you look for in entrepreneurs? Like, these people are all selling themselves, and entrepreneurs are selling themselves.
Yeah. Balance. I think that a big piece of it is, and it used to be a heyday, right, of prior to pandemic, I think. Entrepreneurs, the hustle, the entrepreneurial mindset was you got to work 70 hours a week, 345 hours a week, figure that one out. That was it's not sustainable. And I think that and I never aspired to that. I thought that was something that was important to do, to work that hard. But you will burn yourself out. And burnout is interesting. Burnout is not lack of motivation. Burnout is you're flat in the water and you just can't figure out what the next step is. And it doesn't matter at that point. It doesn't matter how much other people are talking to you about it. Just it's hard to get that energy back out. I look for balance in people. If you're starting a company, great. There's something you're doing, wonderful. But we're at the end of the day, we're all our own business. We're all our own company, right? How do you get yourself through your own life is a task in and of itself. Balance is important. So one of the things that I'd add, one last thing to the whole thing of demotivation is have something else that actually energizes you in your life. Whether that's meeting up with friends, whether that's writing, whether that's starting a science fiction site, whether that is going for a run. Have something else that takes you out of whatever it is that's demotivating. Because I think that you need to create a little bit of a flywheel for yourself, for internal motivation. Whether that's praying, whether that's going to meeting with your pastor, whatever.
Oh yeah, sorry, can I ask you another question? It's
Sure.
How do you, so when you have an entrepreneur that comes to you that's failed, because that happens too, right? We're all talking about plans and succeeding. Yeah, right? Me too. What do you, when you see that on the application, right? What's your gut reaction to seeing an entrepreneur who's blown through either other VC money or started a company and it didn't work out, they had to shut it down? What's your reaction?
Introspection. Right? I want to know if that person has gone through a level of what happened and why. It's a debrief after a mission, right? It's coming together and saying, I planned these things, this didn't work out. Why and how does that make me feel? Because again, failure can demotivate you, failure can burn you out. And so it goes back to introspection, which is why I asked that question is, before you get to your next thing, you have to understand what it is that you actually are about. You started thing A, you started thing B, you started thing C. None of them work. What's the common things there, right? Is it you didn't understand something about each one of these things? Is it you tried to work with the wrong kind of people for that particular thing? You have to, being an entrepreneur is really about, at the end of the day, yourself. And so it's like, spend time with yourself, spend time with your therapist, spend time with your pastor, spend time with your friends. I'll keep coming back to that because at the end of the day, these are the people, these are the chambers of echo that you create that can help you figure out who and why you're doing what you're doing. One of the things, I went into accounting because I was kind of pushed into it, right? I needed to, I was an immigrant student, an international student here, and I was on a clock because I had a visa. And so I had to find a way to make myself valuable very quickly. So what did that mean? That meant art, writing, graphics design, all these things that required a long-term investment were out. I actually originally, my major that I declared when I first came here, graphics design and writing. Yeah, graphics design and writing, because I love that stuff. But then I very quickly realized, nope, I need to throw in business in there somewhere. So I did that. But the fact that I went into accounting was kind of pushed onto me. Would I change it? No, I wouldn't change it. I'm not saying that I regret what I picked. But what I would say is that have that other thing. Maybe several of you are in majors because you felt like that's the right thing to do. Not because of yourself, but because of what somebody else told you. Now you're here, now it's time to reevaluate. Because when you leave school, it's what Carolyn said, building a social network means you're going into a vacuum. You're going into an information vacuum where if you don't have people you trust, anything will enter that vacuum. And some of that stuff will break you, some of that stuff will beat you. So.
I have a question following up on that. You mentioned you're an international student. What advice do you have for international students, third culture kids, missionary kids that are kind of working against that time bomb that is a visa and also trying to establish a new community and put down some kind of roots, knowing that you can be kind of pulled up at any point?
I cheated. Some of you know what that means. I cheated. I married a Caucasian woman from the United States, and that settled it for me. So I think what I would say is when you're looking for work, right? The very first thing that needs to be out there is do we sponsor for a visa? That has to be a make or break deal, because if that's the intention of you staying in this country, that's what you need to be able to do. Now, larger organizations will also do some things like where you can still work with them until your EAD expires, until your CPT expires, and so on, right? One of the things that they'll do is they'll actually transfer you to a different branch in a different country temporarily, and then repatriate you back. Some companies did that. Deloitte did not do that for my year, so that's why I had to get rid. But Ernst & Young, for example, KPMG, Price Waterhouse, they all did that. Some of the larger consulting firms will do that. Well, they sent a number of folks to England, to Luxembourg, and so on for a year, brought them back, and reapplied for the whole process. But that's what I'd say is in your job search, you gotta aim very high, because the costs of sponsoring an international student are high for a company, right? And they're on the hook for you. So if you decide to leave, your visa drops as well. There's a number of things that it's a more challenging situation, and you have to aim higher for a high caliber company that will afford to hire you at that point.
Also, on top of that, job sites, a lot of the time you can actually put in keywords to search for things, and you might, especially if you've got a couple of years left, search the keywords for companies that will sponsor your job, and be taking a look at the kinds of jobs that those are, the kinds of companies that are doing that, and that can help you kind of plan ahead on how to do that. Because like you said, a lot of companies won't because it's so expensive. They have to pay extra with that visa. So be planning ahead if you can.
And if anyone has friends who are in that situation and they need to connect with a law firm that specializes in immigration law, there's a couple in Buffalo, one of which that we work with for our companies. So let me know if anyone needs to know who that is. If you don't already, I'm happy to connect you. I can send information to HR. I'm sure.
Yes. Actually, one of our interns that we have at my job is from Spain. And he's running into the issue where we can't, when he graduates, pay for that visa, but we can have him work remotely from Spain and 4 to 5 times a year have him come over for a month. So there are a bunch of different options. It's not necessarily with them full time or not at all. So bear in mind that there are a lot of gray areas and kind of wiggle room in there.
What other questions do you all have?
Following up on kind of another part of what you were talking about, I feel like a lot of students just have paralysis of choice, especially like with a business major where you can go into so many fields or you can move anywhere in the world. So how did you guys decide what that next step was when you had so many options available to you, whether that's geographically or your vocation?
No, it's a good question. So my grandfather. So I have a weird background in that my dad was a pastor and my grandfather was actually a pretty successful entrepreneur. And I was probably of the there's only 5 of us grandkids. It's a pretty small family. I was probably the closest with him, and he always told me that finance is where the action happens. You need to learn a lot of accounting because that's the language of business. So I indexed high on someone I loved and trusted and had seen success in their career on sort of what they said to do. So I suppose I was forced into it in a different way than Chi maybe was. But I think you have to pick, right? Like no company, right, is very good at trying to be good at everything, right? You can't. Usually, you have to pick quality, volume, or speed, and you can have 2 of the 3. I'm sorry I'm butchering that quote, but that's usually the case. So you have to pick, right? I don't know. Find a few areas, but there's lots of domains. There's finance, there's accounting, right? There's human resources, there's kind of the communications lens. I think once you pick your lane, you don't always have to stay in it in business, which is another cool thing, right? Like I'm sort of walking proof of that. I had a long finance career. I took a 2-year detour into what they call customer success, which is kind of like consulting and professional services, and also like a new way to talk about operations at a software company. You will find that like the things that you enjoy doing will naturally I think come out of the thing you picked. But yeah, you do have to pick, and that's okay. It's healthy to pick.
If I could just add, so the company I work for mainly works with accounting and finance offices and law offices. And so I talk to a lot of young people who are in business and accounting trying to get jobs. I would say if you don't know exactly what you want to do, find an agency that will allow you a lot of flexibility and allow you to kind of shadow different people in different departments rather than taking one job that's specific and then hopping to another one and hopping to another one in quick succession. There's a term for that. We call them job hoppers, and that puts a big red flag on your resume for the next like 5 to 10 years. Be very careful to not immediately be that person that switches a job every 6 months to a year repeatedly. Having 1 or 2 switchovers in a long career isn't a problem, but so I would say if you don't know exactly what you want, rather than finding a very narrow track and then switching all the time, find a place that you can explain in an interview or in the job description. They're going to let you shadow different people and be in the call center for a while and help with the marketing team and do some HR and do some finance work. Find a job that will let you do that. And a lot of people, managers, people that are hiring, like to see that because it means they think you're invested and you're interested. They like people with goals that are teachable. A lot of you that don't have hands-on experience with work, you don't have degrees or experience that's putting you into a tinier pool to make you attractive. You are selling yourself based on the fact that you're teachable and you're driven. So find a place that is going to respect that and want to teach you things, right? You need to find that match.
The one additional thought avenue is depending on the skill set that the major or the concentration you're in, right? Potentially look for a company that's also a consulting company or has a consulting arm to it, right? Because the one benefit of the accounting firms that I went through is the fact that you're doing something is butter over bread, right? You're getting to do work for a bank, you get to do work for a nonprofit, you get to do work for a nonprofit, you get to do work for a school, et cetera, et cetera. So consulting firms can give you that breadth of seeing, hey, what else is out there. I mean, it stands to reason that, at this stage, you're kind of between a rock and a hard place, right? You're gonna have to pick. So what Carolyn's suggesting makes all the sense in the world. The other thing is if you have the opportunity to work with a smaller regional consulting firm, accounting firm, or something like that, try to find that, because then that will give you're still employed by one employer, but you're getting to do jobs on individual different companies, manufacturing companies, or whatever, things like that. So that's my thought. What's your concentration, if you don't mind my asking?
Actually, leadership development.
Leadership. Okay.
If any of you are interested in doing what he's suggesting and finding a small kind of local accounting firm, I'm actually recruiting for one that wants people coming out of college. So, if any of you are going that track, stop by and talk to me after.
That's it. It's fun. I know a lot of folks who did that and working with something for 3, 4, 5 to 10 years, and that's a great route. If you're not as lasered into what you want to do, it's fun, and you get to that's a cheese point. If you hate manufacturing, well, don't go too small. They're the only person that can do all of the work, but go to a mid-sized firm where it's like, hey, boss, I know we made it through, and she was talking about taxes earlier, right? It's like that wasn't for me, and I think that will help you. And then often is the case as well where you're at a consultancy and you meet a client that maybe you click with, and maybe it's a cool company, and maybe you want to go be their accounting manager, or their finance manager, their CFO, or so run some component of one of their teams. That's it kind of is like a little bit of college after college, right? You're definitely getting paid to learn as a junior consultant, and you don't have to choose. So there's sort of I think I qualify what I said earlier is you have to pick if you want to go into a company. If you're a consultant, it sort of delays your need to pick. Eventually, we all got to pick, but that would delay it for sure. And leadership development, I think consulting is a great place to do it. You see a lot of styles, right? People you're gonna have a lot of credibility, right, going into different situations. Assuming you aspire to either be a coach or in HR or some sort of thing to help people grow their leadership. The more in that field you can see different styles, what works and what doesn't, and then speak to anecdotal stories, the more successful you're going to be.
The one thing I want to mention is missions work, right? Because every missions organization has a business aspect to it to make the organization run. So check in with your church, check in with Houghton, check in with any of these organizations that you might already be connected with. Because at the end of the day, they're still doing some of the work of how to run the organization, right? And so there's ample opportunity there. Business isn't necessarily separated from that.
We had our job and internship fair last week, and it was really fun to see the different companies. You think, oh, this is a healthcare company, or this is a missions organization, but they're looking for graphic designers, or they're looking for accountants. So you can't always just look at the industry of a company and say, oh, I only have to be able to do that thing. So, yeah, any other questions? Like I said, I want you all to be the ones that have questions.
So I'm kind of in a rock and a hard place right now. So I've done 2 years of interning with a big organization. I've done a lot of complex projects with them, and I just got a job offer as a project analyst for them. But I love project management, and it's been told, they sent me the job description that 10% of my work would be project management. But it's the only opening at that organization right now, and they want me to take it, but part of me wants a job where I'm going to be working in those projects. So, like he mentioned, if you're working in consulting, you get an eye of everything, all these different fields, and that's something that I've noticed in project management. It works kind of similarly, and now I'm kind of in this situation where I have to choose whether or not I want to take that or if I want to kind of go into the unknown.
I know how it works at M&T in that, for example, a project analyst would actually be the precursor to a project manager. I think, to all the points that have been mentioned, you got to have an honest conversation about it with your hiring manager, with the recruiter, and just understand, well, what does that mean for my career here, right? And so you can share, hey, I have this goal of being a project manager. I think I'm very organized. I think I enjoy working, across business lines. I think these are my strengths. You guys have probably seen that. I've worked with you, for two summers, it sounds like. I think if you have the conversation, look, a lot of people are scared of having candid conversation. Even me, who's pretty direct, and many times be put off by that. You don't lose anything by having an open dialogue with people who it sounds like trust you and have a high opinion of you, and just say, hey, here's what I'm thinking. Does that match what you guys are thinking of? And hey, like, this would be my expectation, when I start. I think if you did that and they said, well, yeah, no, actually this would not lead to project management, well, there's your answer, But if they say, hey, yeah, actually that's great. And to the point about everybody wants a lifelong learner and someone who's driven. Like, I don't care if you're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, like everybody wants that. So if you said that to them, they would be, wow, this seems like a really special guy on our hand. You know what I mean? Like, that's really cool. So I don't think you lose. I'd be curious to hear what the other folks say of just having a conversation, given that it sounds like you've established some trust there.
I had that conversation with them, and they use this ServiceNow platform, which is like an ERP system, and all of the project managers use it. So the analyst role would be, you would give a lot of technical support to other people within the organization on how to use that software, but in turn you're learning it to an extent that you would be able to be a project manager down the road and do it, and that's. No, it's more like, I'm debating if I want to do that and get my foot in the door, maybe become a project manager in 5 to 10 years, or go to a smaller startup like Carolyn did, and be able to do that project management maybe right away with my experience.
I would echo that idea of, again, drive home that that's what you want to be doing. And I don't want to discourage you immediately, but when I talk to hiring managers, they are very hesitant frequently to put someone in a managerial role who's going to be younger than the rest of staff. Because you can't forget, it's not just the work on the computer screen, it's a team of people. And so some hiring managers would be fine with that, but a lot of the time, if you're right out of college, they're not gonna want to put you above people who have years of experience. Because yes, you might have a technical experience, you don't have the years of full-time after post-graduation experience. That comes into it. It's not just technical skill. It's lifetime skill that they're also looking at when they're looking at putting someone in a managerial kind of position. If you went to something super small, they might, but then you have to risk losing your foot in the door with this company. So I don't have a clear answer for you, I'm sorry, but just something to keep in mind.
Sorry, G. I have a thought to add there too. I think, because I'm like the guy who likes speed, when I was in your seat, that's what I liked, You're probably a naturally gifted guy. You seem very driven, you seem very thoughtful. Here's the cool thing about careers is, I think as Carolyn talked about, it's a long game, right? It's not 6 months or a year. It's like, a long time. There's ups and downs, and if you think this is a good company, that's actually kind of hard to find sometimes. A lot of us go trying to find something that work is interesting, people are good. It's not just this technical, what system they use, how quickly can I advance. The other cool thing is you never lose that edge of wanting more. That's good. I don't think any of us would ever tell you that. There's so much learning that you can do being in the role you described to start out with, assuming again it bridges you to the next. Look, I would just tell you, you're just going to be the fastest guy to do it, right? If they don't hire people out of school to be project managers, you're just doing it 3 years as opposed to 5 years or 7 years. That's fine. The neat thing though is, number one, you get to learn in a low pressure environment. You're not the project manager, so projects aren't in your name. If they fail, that ain't you. But you get to watch success and failure. And given that you're motivated, you're going to watch it like a hawk. You're going to be like, oh my gosh, how would I do it differently? How would I know? Talking about cheese introspection, right? I think for me, the reason I've I wanted to move fast and continue to do that was not because like I was really motivated. That only gets you so far. It's also because I thought a lot about how other people did things, both at my company through listening to podcasts and other things. That said, okay, like repetition and learned experience is super important. So I think that would be number one. Number two, as you grow, you're not like the young kid who comes out of college and it's like, man, what is, he's really smart. Yeah, sure, but like we've been doing this for a long time. We know that ServiceNow has this little tick, and so like when he messes up, we're not going to tell him about that bug that he should start to know about. When you're in a place for 2 or 3 years, you build relationships. Like we talked about, people want you to succeed. They're like, you become like this young kid who came out of school and wanted to like blow through their doors. So like, oh my gosh, this is great. What's your name? Jacob. They're like, Jacob, wow. He comes into work like half hour early. He stays 15 minutes late. He always will notice like some risk on a project. Like I haven't thought about as a project manager. Oh my gosh, like, you know what? Like it would be unusual as like a 24, 25, 26-year-old to put him in project management. But gee, I should really talk to my boss about him because like he kind of gets it. I think if you can have the patience and the thoughtfulness to stick it out, and if it's a good company, if it's a sucky company, and we're just
it's a health system. So it's University of Rochester Medical Center, and so
that's where my son goes for heart treatment. Amazing place, but anyway, go on.
That it's added to the fact that if I did do this work somewhere else, it's not. I feel like this work is so valuable because you're not a clinician. Like I could never do that work. I'm so scared of blood. But knowing that somewhere down the line, me putting in place this one of the projects is AI. It's an AI aneurysm software. So being able to be on a team doing that, you're helping a clinician down the line save lives. So it's kind of cool having that end of the spectrum on it, where if you were doing project management somewhere else, you might help them do something faster or save them money somewhere,
I mean, look, man, you're talking to a guy whose son has had one open heart surgery at U of R, and is gonna have another one this summer. So I'm like, that's God's work, I think. There, and I went to U of R for an MBA. So from what I know of it, it's a great place, and I think you could do worse. To your point, I think if you have a good mind for the future about, hey, the type of work I do. Look, healthcare is only going to expand, right? All of us in this room are going to get older, and we don't seem to be replacing ourselves with babies. So from like a purely sort of marketplace standpoint, it's probably a good move there too to learn healthcare tech, right? So if that all aligns, yeah, I think, you pray about it and you say, God, like here's all the things I've considered. I asked these yahoos up on stage, they seem to give me some things to think about. What do you think, God? We're gonna do this? And I'm a firm believer that it's the head and the heart that God leads us through, and it sounds like your head is kind of there. It sounds like maybe your heart is thinking about it. I just say ask God to help you just make that final decision.
Well, we are coming close to time, and I know we've got chapel starting a little bit, but I just wanted to say thank you to you all. We are going to be, they're also going to be available over lunch in the Alumni dining room, which is the roadside, near where the hot food is. I don't know what that area is called. Anybody know what that side's called? Anyway, roadside on the cafeteria in the Alumni dining room. Right after chapel until about 12:45. So if you're able to stop by, it's just a come and go kind of time, much more conversational. So if you have specific questions, also wanted to just thank you. If you all could help me join them in saying thank you. Our advancement team wanted to offer you some nice Houghton folios so you can represent your now Houghton University.
All right, yeah. All our gear is outdated.
Yes. And somewhere, we also I'll find them and give them to you, but there's, maybe this is a quiz, okay? So a little bit quiz. Do you know how Willard J. Houghton would sign his letters?
It was something about like service to, oh boy.
We're revoking your degree.
Yeah, well, at least I tried, Alex,
He would sign them, yours for fixing up the world.
Fixing up the world.
So we have some
Just saying service
stickers
to the world.
give you all.
Oh, man.
Willard J. Houghton quote there.
Good.
So, all right, thank you very much, everybody.
If you guys don't stop by, well, I'll feel very hurt.
So offended.
Yeah. You have an actual
job, right?
Thank you. Oh, thanks. My mom said she'll watch the YouTube channel.
Surprising. I'm literally doing